This question is pretty straightforward. You just have to plug in this k here, and you'll get that x minus 1 over 3 is equal to 3. Multiply both sides by 3. You'll get that x minus 1 is equal to 9. Add 1 to both sides, and you'll get that x is equal to 10. And that's just D. This question tries to throw you off by including I is equal to the square root of negative 1. That doesn't really do anything for this question. You just have to simplify this expression. And so get rid of the parentheses. You'll get that 7 plus 3i minus 8 plus 9i. You can see that you have like terms here and here. 7 minus 8 is negative 1. And 3i plus 9i is 12i. That's it. Your answer's A. This question just wants you to form an expression to represent the situation that's being described here. And the most important thing is to understand what name is represented by which variable and how many hours that person spent texting. So Ahmad is represented by M, and he spent 5 hours texting. So you multiply 5 by M. And then Tyrone sent P texts, and he did that for 4 hours. So he is 4P. And you're not going to be multiplying M and P because it doesn't really tell you to do that anywhere here. We're just adding up the total number of texts that they're sending. So it's just going to be C. The best way to find the meaning of 108, I can see, is to plug in 0 for D. Because if she works 0 days, which is what that would mean if we make it 0, P is just equal to 108. So what would that mean? Let's just go through the options and see what's possible, what's not possible. Kathy will completely repair within 108 days. No, because the days is D, has nothing to do with it. Kathy starts each week with 108 phones to fix. That would be possible because 0 days is the start of the week. So she has 108 phones, and then as the days go on, less and less phones are there to be repaired. That makes sense, so B is the answer. And let's just go through the other ones to see why they won't work. Kathy repairs phones at a rate of 108 per hour. 108 is not being multiplied by any kind of variable, so that has nothing to do with it. And same thing with D. All right, so this question's pretty straightforward. You just have to start off by getting rid of the parentheses, and don't forget to distribute the negative sign throughout all of these parts of the expression. So we'll get the x squared y minus 3y squared plus 5xy squared plus, because minus times a minus is a positive, x squared y and minus 3xy squared and then plus 3y squared. So now let's look for common terms throughout this thing. So we have a negative 3y squared and we have a positive 3y squared. So those two are just going to cancel to 0. And then you got xy squared positive, xy squared positive. So those will just get added up to 2x squared y. And then you have plus 5xy squared and you have minus 3xy squared. So these two, 5 minus 3, will just give you a positive 2xy squared. So that looks a lot like C, so that's the answer. The most important part of this question is to just pay attention to the fact that it says estimated increase in inches of a boy's height each year. Each year part basically means that the variable A represents the number of years. So whatever number A is being multiplied, that's the estimated increase. So 3A means the answer is just 3. This question just wants us to find this equation in terms of P. So in order to do that, all we have to do is multiply the side with P on it by this fraction, the reciprocal of it, in order to make it go away so that we just have P all on its own on that side. So if we do that, the reciprocal, we just take the stuff from the bottom, put it on top, and do the opposite with the stuff on top. So we'll just have 1 plus r over 1200 to the power of n minus 1 over r over 1200 times 1 plus r over 1200 to the power of n. So now that we have that, this is what we're multiplying both sides by. That gets rid of it here, but it multiplies that on the side of m. So now this side of the equation is times m, and that's equal to p. So let's take a look at our options, and that looks like it's b. This problem looks tricky because you're only given one equation, but there's two different variables. But you don't have to find the value of either variable. You just have to find the value of this expression. So all you have to do is use your given expression, multiply both sides by b. You'll get that a is equal to 2b. Then you just got to plug that in here. You'll get that 4b over 2b is equal to 2. So your answer is C. This question is pretty straightforward. You can solve it using either elimination or substitution, but I think elimination's easier in this case because 4y and 2y, those two, you can manipulate 2y, multiply it by 2 to make it a 4y so that they'll cancel. So in order to do that, you just got to flip these two, and you can do that because it's addition, so it won't really change anything at all. And you'll get that 4y plus 3x is equal to negative 23. And now for this equation, you multiply the whole thing by 2. So 2 times 2y, 4y, minus 2 times negative x, negative 2x, is equal to 2 times negative 29. That's negative 38. Negative 38. So now all you got to do is subtract them out, and that's the same thing as putting parentheses around this entire equation and making it all negative. So 4y minus 4y is 0. 3x minus a negative 2x, so that's the same thing as 3x plus 2x. That's just plus 5x. And now negative times negative 38 is a positive 38. 38 minus 23 means this equation is equal to 15. So now you can just divide both sides by 5, and you'll get that x is equal to 3. And if you look at your answer choices, you don't even need to find what y is equal to because there's only one choice where x is equal to 3, which is b. This question tries to trick you with this a here, but it really doesn't matter because 4 squared and negative 4 squared are both 16, and this is what that format means, that you're plugging in the value here for x. So 4 plugged into x, 16. Negative 4 plugged into x, 16. If you get how I got there, you can just skip this next portion. I'm going to explain like the proof behind it, why it works. So basically, let's take g of 4, which is 8. We can say that's 8 is equal to, and plug in the 4 here. We'll get that 16a plus 24 is equal to 8. Now let's plug in negative 4. So it's going to be the same thing, but we'll just put g of negative 4 because it's a mystery value to us. We don't know if it's 8, whatever it is. But all we got to do here is plug in negative 4 for x, and we'll get that 16a plus 24 is equal to g of negative 4. But here you can just do some substitution, and you can say, oh, well, this equals 8. So I can just plug in 8 here, and it'll be the same thing. So g of negative 4 is equal to 8. There you go. Your answer is A. All we're looking for in this question is when the price of beef is equal to the price of chicken. So what does that mean? That just means we're looking for when B is equal to C. And we know that B is equal to this equation, and that C is equal to this equation. So we can just plug those in. We'll get that 2.35 plus 0.25x is equal to 1.75 plus 0.4x. So now in order to do this, we can start off by subtracting 1.75 from both sides. And you'll be left with, on this side, 0.6 plus 0.25x. And that's all going to be equal to, these are going to cancel out to 0, 0.4x. So now your next step is going to be subtracting 0.25x from both sides. So now this is going to go to 0, and you'll just have 0.6 on this side. Now that's all going to be equal to 0.15x. So now you're just going to divide both sides by 0.15, 0.15, and you'll get that. I'm going to continue my work up here. And that's just going to get you that 4 is equal to x. And now you can plug it into either b or c, because that's when they're equal to each other. So I'm going to plug it into b because it's going to be an easier multiplication there. B is equal to 2.35 plus 0.25 times 4. So now that's just going to get you that. These are going to simplify to 1. You'll get that b is equal to 2.35 plus 1, and that's equal to 3.35, which is d. This equation gives us enough information to make an equation. We know that it goes through the origin, and we know that the slope is 1 over 7. So given that, we know that there's going to be no b value in the y equals mx plus b format. So we can just take y and plug in 1 over 7 for the slope, the m, in y equals mx plus b, times x, and there's no b value, so that's just the equation. So we can just start plugging in points. 0 and 7. Well, that would mean that 7 is equal to 0 times 1/7, which is 0. Not true. So it's wrong. We can try b. 7 is equal to 1/7. That's also not true. We can plug in 7 and 7, and we'll get that 7 is equal to 7 times 1 over 7, which is just 1. So we know that's all wrong. And we don't really have to check the last one because that's the only one that's possible, but I'm going to plug it in just to show that it is true, and that is the right answer. So that would mean that 2 is equal to 14 over 7, which is, in fact, 2. So that's your... This question is pretty straightforward. It just has a lot of steps. So what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to simplify what's going on down here, and I'm just going to ignore that it's all under 1. We're going to get back to that later. So we're going to start off by taking x plus 2, 1 over x plus 2, plus 1 over x plus 3. So in order to simplify that, we have to multiply both of these by the other value. So we're going to multiply 2x by x plus 3 over x plus 3. And if we do that on the other side, where we multiply by x plus 2, we're going to get that both of the denominators are going to be x plus 3 times x plus 2, so we'll be able to add them. So, but in order to multiply in fractions, we have to multiply it by something that's equivalent to 1. So that's why we're doing the x plus 2 or the x plus 3 on top here. So x plus 3 times 1 is going to be x plus 3. And we can just combine the denominator because it doesn't really matter anymore. It's the same thing for both of them. It's just x plus 3 and x plus 2. So now we're just going to add plus, and then 1 times x plus 2 is just x plus 2. So what does all this simplify to? This is just going to be x plus x and 3 plus 2, 2x plus 5. And then we're just going to, down here, we're going to simplify whatever this is. So we're going to use FOIL to solve it. X times x, x times 2, 3 times x, 3 times 2. So we're going to get x squared, and then we're going to get x, or plus 2x, and then we're going to get plus 3x, and we're going to get plus 6, which all that simplifies to x squared plus 5x plus 6. But now we're going to get back to the fact that this is all under 1. Now that we have this all simplified, this is all under 1. And in order to get that to be a normal fraction, all this really means is we just have to flip this, and it'll be the reciprocal, which will be the answer. X squared plus 5x plus 6 over 2x plus 5, which is b. If you understood how I did that, please feel free to skip this part, but here I'm just going to explain why 1 over 2x plus 5 over x squared plus 5x plus 6 is just the reciprocal. I'm just going to prove that for people who might not know how to do it. What this means is a fraction is just division, so it just means 1 is being divided by 2x plus 5 over x squared plus 5x plus 6. But when you're dividing by a fraction, you're really just multiplying by its reciprocal. So it's 1 times x squared plus 5x plus 6 over 2x plus 5. So now if you multiply that by 1, anything times 1 is just itself. So that's why it's going to be x squared plus 5x plus 6 over 2x plus 5, which again, just repeating it, was b. So this question tries to trick you by including the answer choice D, because it's like, oh, well, maybe it's possible you can't solve the question, so that's probably the right answer. But it's not. You can solve this question, and it's really not that hard if you remember your exponent rules, or just pay attention to them in general. So what you can notice here is that 8 is the same thing as 2 to the power of 3. Converting it to that form is going to be important later, but 2 to the power of 3, and all of that is to the power of x. And you know, in exponents, an exponent to an exponent, you just multiply them together. So this is the same thing as 2 to the power of 3x. So now you have that 2 to the power of 3x is over 2 to the power of y. Now, if you remember another thing from exponent rules, if you have the same base in an exponential expression, if you're dividing these exponential expressions by each other, you can just subtract the exponents from each other. So you'll get that 2 is 3x minus y, which is really convenient because they gave us that 3x minus y is 12. So you can just plug that in here, 2 to the power of 12, which is a. In order to solve this, we're going to have to start off by FOILing these. So ax times bx is just abx squared. Ax times 7 is plus 7ax. And then 2 times bx is plus 2bx. And then 2 times 7 is just plus 14. So the way you have to solve this is kind of tricky because you're working off of an assumption that since this is in the same format as this equation here, that a times b will give you 15, and whatever these two values here will add up to will give you the c value. So now we made that assumption. I don't know if you can really prove that, but that's really the only way to solve this question. We need to get 15. A times b has to be 15. So a times b is equal to 15. And we know that a plus b has to be 8. So what two values can we possibly have that will give us 15? 3 times 5 is 15. So we can assume that either a is 3 or that a is 5. And the same thing for b. B can either be 3 or 5. Now that we know that, we can start off by plugging in these values in the middle here and see what two values we'll get for c. So the first one we'll try is b as 3 and a as 5. So now that we're going to try that, we're just going to have that 15x squared plus 7 times a, if a is 5, is going to be 35x plus, and then b is going to be 3, so 2 times b, 2 times 3 is 6, plus 14. So what does that give us? That gives us that this middle value here is going to add up to 41x, and can just add up. So now we added that stuff, we got 41 as one of the possible values. And if you look around, none of the other values have 41, so D is the only. This question is pretty straightforward. We just have to find the value of t. So we'll just start off by taking what's given to us, adding 4 to both sides, and we'll get that t squared is equal to 4. Then we can just square root both sides. We'll get that plus or minus t is equal to 2. But we really don't need that plus or minus because we know that our t value is only going to be positive. So we can get rid of that minus there, and we just know that positive t is equal to 2. So your answer is 2. There's two main factors when it comes to solving this question, and it's proven that these are similar triangles, and then just labeling all the sides to see what parts are similar to what. So the way you can prove that this is similar is you're already given that this angle is the same as this angle. But you can also tell that this angle right here is equal to this angle. So that's really enough to prove that these are similar triangles. It's not enough to prove that they're congruent, but they're not congruent because this one's obviously way smaller than this one. So now let's just label it. AB is 1800. EB is 1400. BD is 700. So that's that. And then we're given that CD is 800. So then you can notice, since these are similar triangles, that if you multiply the value of BD, which is 700, by 2, you'll get EB. So now this side is equal to this side, which means that AB is equal to BC, and that AE is not equal, but you can multiply it by 2 by a value of 2. If you multiply DC by 2, you'll get X. So this times 2 is going to be 1600, which is just what X is. So it's 1600. So for this, we just need to find the value of X. So we're not even going to bother with the Y. We can just use elimination to get only X's. So we can do that is multiply this equation by 2. So we can have a 2y here, so those would subtract out and be gone. So you'd get that 2x plus 2y is equal to negative 18. Here you'll get that x plus 2y is equal to negative 25. So now if we subtract it, remember that's the same thing as putting parentheses around it and distributing the minus through all of it. 2x minus x is just x. 2y minus 2y is just 0. And 18 minus a negative 25 is the same thing as adding 25, is going to be 7. So x is equal to 7. That's it. That's your answer. All right, so the best way to solve this question is to just draw a triangle. So here is our right triangle, got a little 90-degree angle here. And let's make this the angle x. So we know that sine of x is going to be 4 over 5. So the opposite of x is 4. And our hypotenuse is 5. So we know that. That's what we got from the given here. So now we're looking for cosine of 90 minus x. So now how do we get 90 minus x? What is that? We don't know what the value of x is. But really, that doesn't matter because we know that the combined value of the angles inside the triangle is 180. So 180 minus, and we know that this angle is 90. We know that this angle is x. So we can subtract that out, and that'll give us this angle here. Right? And that angle here basically is just 90 minus x, because 80 minus 90 is 90. So this angle here is 90 minus x. Now the cosine of that angle is going to be the adjacent side, which we know is 4, over the hypotenuse, which is 5. So it's also just going to be 4 over 5. So that's your answer. Feel free to skip this part if you know your sines and cosines, but if that last question didn't make any sense and you're not familiar with what sines and cosines are, this is for you. So basically, sines and cosines are just a little formula you got to remember for each of them. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. So an easy way to remember this is there's this thing called SOHCAHTOA. It's spelled like this. It's a weird word, but if you just remember that word, it's the easiest way to remember it, because the S is for sine, and it's O opposite over hypotenuse, and so on and so forth. That's just an easy way to remember it. So I'm going to just draw up one practice problem here, and yeah. We'll make this side like 8, make this side like 5, and make this side like 12. Look, I'm not sure if this triangle is a real possibility of a triangle. I don't know if it checks out with Pythagorean theorem and whatnot, but that doesn't really matter for this example. We're just going to be finding the sines and cosines and tangents of the angles. So let's say that this is angle x. So let's find sine of x. Well, that's just the opposite angle over the hypotenuse. So sine is 8 over 12. Cosine is, that is the adjacent side, which is 5 over the hypotenuse, 5 over 12. And let's find the tangent, opposite over adjacent, 8 over 5. and that should make sense from now on. You should just remember that. So this question is pretty straightforward, not a whole lot going on. What we can do is we can just multiply this equation here by 2, and we'll get that 2a is equal to 10 root 2. Then we can plug this in for this, and then we can solve for x. That way we don't have two variables we have to deal with. Right? So now we have 10 root 2 is equal to root 2x. Now, a thing about square roots is this 10 out here could be back in here if we just squared it. So this would just be the same thing as root 200, because 10 times 10 times 2 would be 200. And that's equal to root 2 times x. So 200 is equal to 2x. So if we divide both sides by 2, we'll get that x is just 100.